Hello and welcome to my quick guide tank coaching. This is part 2 about weapons and the skill trees. Since this is only the quick guide version, I will have with you only a quick, not so deep, not so detailed look into the things, and I will only tell you what you need to start right away. Let's talk about our weapons. Since the sword and the warhammer are the most common tanking weapons, I will start with those two. Later I might do videos about other possible tank weapons, but for the moment we just stick to those two. Before we talk about the weapons itself, you can see I have a Carnelian gem in them, also in my other tanking weapons. The Carnelian gem activates our taunts and generates 300% more threat. This is an absolutely mandatory thing. If you're a tank, you have a Carnelian and your tank weapon. That's it. That's all. Okay, let's talk about the sword itself. The sword has kind of two important perks. The most important one by far is Refreshing Move. Oh, thanks, Melok. Refreshing Move. Light and heavy attacks reduce your active weapon cooldowns by 2.5%. This means if you use an ability and the ability is on cooldown and you hit an enemy, which you do in general as a tank, you will reduce with every hit this CD of your ability by 2.5%. So that's just an awesome, beautiful, very, very useful perk for us. The other one, which I just like, is Thwarting Strikes, which will give us plus 7% damage while you have active crit. If you remember, I said we're going to play 300 points in Constitution, which will give our basic melee attacks like heavy and the light attacks crit. So we kind of will always have like this 7% buff on top. As a third perk, you can kind of go whatever you want. I prefer Hated, for example. It just helps to keep aggro. You can also go for like Keen or a weapon perk, whatever you like. Just figure it out. But make sure you always run Refreshing Move. This is the most important one. If your sword does not have Refreshing Move, throw it away. We can talk about the other two, they are not really necessary, but Refreshing Move, must-have perk. Okay, the Warhammer. You also see my Warhammer has Refreshing Move. We don't need to talk about this one again. Same as Thwarting Strikes. We don't need to talk about this again. I like to run the Thundering Shockwave perk on my Warhammer, which will inflict Rend, which will reduce the target's armor by 15 for 10 seconds. So it basically means my group and me, we're dealing more damage to our enemies. So this is a beautiful perk to run. You could also, for an alternative, run the Thundering Cleared perk I have on an armor here, on the weapon for example, and just put instead the Shockwave perk on here. Okay, that's so far about the weapons. Alright, we have talked about the weapons themselves. Now it's time to talk about the skill trees we want to use here. Let's start with the sword and the shield. I will show you a basic skill tree where you can decide in the end if you want to go more defensive on the defender side or more offensive on the swordmaster side. The basic skill looks like this. We go for 15% additional physical armor. We go for 10% reduced damage from all magical types. We scale 50% less damage of our stamina taken when blocking a melee attack. There's the same one for ranged, but since the most attacks you're blocking are melees, there's no need to skill the range point here. Instead, we invest a point in when we're blocking, gain 20% fortify, huge one. Then we skill our first ability, Defender's Resolve. For 8 seconds, we reduce the incoming damage by 30%, and we decrease the stamina damage taken by 20% when we do a block. Also, this ability has crit, and it is taunt gem compatible. This means it is our first taunt ability. Final countdown. If your health is above 50%, damage reduction is increased by 20%. The final perk here, when the Defender's Resolve ends, heal 15% of your max health. This is another good reason to have as much health as possible. Then all incoming healing and regeneration is increased by 10%. This we can log in. This is our basic skill tree for the defender side. Now let's have a look at the Swordmaster side. We go for empowered stat. Successful heavy attacks grant you 30% empowered for 5 seconds. So you do a basic heavy attack and you just get 30% more damage. That's huge, isn't it? Then we go for precision, sword and shield. Critical strike chance is increased by 10%. We go for counter attack. When we block an attack, we gain 3% empowered for 5 seconds. This can stack up to 5. This means we can get 15% more damage just from blocking from time to time. Together with the empowered stab, where we get already 30%, this is 45% more damage in total. This is awesome. This is huge. Then we skill the reverse stab. It's a very, very important key ability. At the moment, it's just a stab ability which deals 175% thrust damage. We skill this, then the ability will also have grit. Then we actually need to skill this point here because we need to reach the final attack of the stab ability. This one here gives us 10% more damage to slowed enemies. We have some abilities where we can apply slow, or we can just use the slow which gets applied from our allies. Okay, final perk. This is so beautiful. Tactician. On a successful hit with reverse step, all other sword cooldowns are reduced by 25%. Let's have a look at Defender's Resolve. This ability has almost 40 seconds cooldown. This means if this ability is used and we do the reverse step, we can reduce this by 25%. This means we have 10 seconds less cooldown. This is huge. We love this. The last mastery point we want to scale is confidence. While health is full, we deal 50% more damage. With a good healer, absolutely not a problem. Okay, now we lock this in. With this setup, we have a very good baseline to start from this. For more defensive playstyle, we will insert the last 3 points into defender side, or for a more offensive playstyle, we go for the Swordmaster side. For the beginning, I recommend to play more defensive because it just increases the survivability. For this, we go for the Shield Rush. We are rushing forward, staggering and pushing back our foes. This attack deals 100% strike weapon damage. It has grit. And we can empower this even more. On a successful hit, all enemies within 5 meters inflicted by 20% weakened for 10 seconds. This means they will just deal 20% less damage to everyone, not only us, also our group. Okay, then we have 1 point left, and this will unlock our final ability. This is defensive formation. While blocking, reduce the damage to all allies within 4 meters by 30%. This means I hold up my shield and I'm not only protecting myself, I also protect my allies around me as long as they are in the range of 4 meters. This is awesome. So for the beginning and for not so much experienced group where you also want to protect your allies for doing mistakes, awesome one. Pretty good choice. You don't need the other points here because they're necessarily bad. Shield Bash is not an option versus the Shield Rush because Shield Rush is just so much better. We have here Invigorated Bulwark, gain 15% stamina when hitting a target with Shield Bash or Shield Rush. We not really need for those extra 15 stamina. Then we have here a CD reduction if we block. This is not necessary because we have way more than enough CD reduction from the reverse step and the refreshing move from our sword. Then we have here Final Blow, which allows our third attack in our attack chain to deal 15% more damage and cause more threat. This will only work if you manage to finish the attack chain. The attack chain is 2 normal slash abilities, and the third one is a spin, and only the spin will deal more damage and cause more threat. If you don't finish the attack chain because you just stopped attacking, you got stunned, for example, you did an ability, you blocked, or whatever stopped you from performing the third one, this perk is just a lost one, because you invested a point in something, you're not taking any use out of it. Same goes, by the way, for this one here, which inflicts rend on the final attack. So only if you manage to do the final attack very often, those 2 points are worth to be taken, otherwise they're just wasted. We can quickly talk about the third point here of the shield rush. This can apply a slow to your enemies if you hit them, but as you can see, we kind of have no point left. If you decide to be more defensive, you can remove one of those points over here to fill up, for example, the slow one here, but in my opinion, not really necessary. Okay, so far about the defender side. Let's talk about the swordmaster side. If we decide to play more offensive, we go for the Willing Blade, which is an AoE ability. We do a spin and do 2 times 80% weapon damage, which is in total 160%. We go for this perk, or for this upgrade, which inflicts 15% rend for 10 seconds. This means the armor of our targets is reduced, so we deal actually more damage to them. And then we can skill the leadership, the final perk on the swordmaster side. While holding a sword, the damage of all group members is increased by 10%. So it's an offensive buff for your group. This is huge, because you have 3 DPS on your side, and every one of those will deal 10% more damage. This is a huge buff. Okay, then we have skilled the third perk here, because it's again about cooldown reduction. If you have a spare one, sure, go for it, but then you need to kind of remove one of those over here, which I kind of say they are mandatory. But if you say you want to go for it, sure do it. The Leaping Strike one is actually not a good alternative, because the Willing Blade is just so much better. It's just basically you jump forward, you stagger your enemy, you deal some damage. You can increase the damage if your enemy has 30% health or less, but this is only good if you have a boss, because normal enemies will just die so quickly that you can't get any use out of this. This one here is basically a slow again, but it's only on the target. And as I said, it's only good for bosses, but bosses can't be slow anyway, so this is a shit ability for PvE. It's good for PvP, but this is not what we're talking about here. Okay, let's focus on the other points we have in skill. We have successful hitting with a heavy attack causes you to lose 1 debuff. This is also a PvP ability, because you get healed by a healer, and the healer will remove the debuffs from you, or he will just heal you and you just don't need to worry about a debuff. We have here 33% movement speed while blocking. No. Just no. Critical precision. On critical, gain 20% haste for 5 seconds. As a tank, you usually not need to run anyway very fast to chase enemies, so that's just no. No. So as you can see, this is the very, very good basic one, and then just, like I said, make the decision if you want to play offensive or defensive. And that's all you need to know about the skill tree of the sword and the shield. Let's talk about the Warhammer. Before I go into the details, I want to let you know what's the goal of my build here. Because I like to play my Warhammer in a CC way. This means I just want to knock my enemies down, knock them back, stagger them, stun them. Because the moment they are CC, they don't deal any damage to me or my group, and they are not doing any other bullshit. So this is just my goal. There are plenty other Warhammer builds out there, so if you're not happy with this build, just have a look. What is a good alternative to this build? Alright, let's have a look. We go for the passives here in the Juggernaut tree. Increase armor penetration by 10% of all Warhammer basic attacks. Awesome. All Warhammer abilities apply exhaust, slowing target stamina regeneration by 20% for 5 seconds. Applying debuffs on our enemies is something important for this build, so this is why we want to have this one here. Then we go for Wrecking Ball. This is a knockdown ability with Grit. It also grants us Fortify, and we just can extend the duration here. And we also grab this point. We deal 35% extra damage for 1 second after taking damage. And as a tank, we just take damage. So, Crowd Crusher ability. This is a knockback ability with Grit. This is another Fortify ability for us. Then we go for the Shockwave. This is actually Stagger and Taunt with Grit and also Taunt Gem compatible. So this is our Taunt ability here. It applies Weaken to our enemies, which means they will deal 10% less damage to us for 10 seconds. And another expand of a radius here. This allows us to scale the third perk on the Clear Out one. It's just a cooldown reduction. Because we don't have like something like the reverse step on the Warhammer, we just need to get our cooldown reduction from somewhere else. Alright, this is about the ability perks or ability mastery points we scale here. Let's have a look at the passives. Increase armor by 20% if surrounded by 2 or more enemies within 3 meters. As a tank, pretty much a standard situation. Reduce stamina consumption by 30% when blocking melee attacks. Awesome! Then this is a very, very important one here. This is such key mastery. Reduce Warhammer cooldowns by 7% when using light attacks against targets with an active debuff. Okay, we have a debuff from here. We have a debuff from here. We have a debuff from here. So we have a lot of debuffs. So we just have permanently a CD reduction here. And that's 7% from here, 2.5% from our refreshing move. So it's almost 10% CD reduction just by doing 1 hit. This is awesome. We like this. Then we do 15% increased damage against targets affected by Warhammer debuffs. I already said we have a lot of them. We have here heal for 35% damage dealt when using a Crowd Crusher ability. We have 2 of them. And we go for this. After 2 light attacks with the Warhammer, debuff duration on player are reduced by 25%. This is for sure an okay one, it's helpful. And now we go to the final one. After shock, whenever a target is affected by a crowd control effect, they are slowed by 20% for 4 seconds. This means another debuff. We just love debuffs with the Warhammer. So this is kind of the build for the Warhammer. For the sake of the time of this video, I don't want to go over the other abilities. Like I said, if you're interested in them or in alternatives builds, then just have a look at another guide, or maybe I'm doing another one, but just for the moment we will just leave it like this, and happy to seeing.